Hi there! Are you ready to do some making? Our craft this week is to make Ed coming out of his egg. Ed is a little bird. It's got a wonderful story called Ed's Egg. If you can find it, that's brilliant. And Ed doesn't want to leave his egg. So here we have Ed coming out of his egg. Now, this is done with paint. If you haven't got paint at home, I'm going to show you how to make homemade, taste-safe paint out of flour, water and food colouring. And it's really, really simple. And that's what both of these have been made with. That one you can't really see the feathers very well because they're made of tissue paper and the light's catching them. Now, a word about clearing up and stopping mess. If you're worried about mess, then wait for a lovely day and go outside onto the patio or onto the grass and then do your painting. Much less mess to worry about, and you don't have to worry about spills. Do make sure your children are either wearing old clothes that you're not bothered about or are covered up. The paints sold for use for children and the homemade ones should all be washable. Another bit of advice is have a nice big cover for whatever surface you're on, and it's a good idea to do that outside as well, if only because it helps stop things digging into little knees and hands. And finally, a bowl of warm water with a little bit of baby bath in and some towels handy are a really good idea, particularly if you're planning on letting your children do finger painting, as that is very messy. Now, if you want to do finger painting using the homemade paints, just keep it nice and thick. You will need to make quite a lot. So instead of using tablespoons, as I'm going to suggest, you might want to use cups. If you're using bought paints, you can thicken those with flour to make them into a thicker, more spreadable texture. All entirely up to you. But we're going to make Ed the chick coming out of his egg. You can either have feathers for his wings and his top knot, or you can make the feathers from tissue paper like this and this. Okay, I'll see you in just a moment when I'll show you to start with how to make the homemade paint, and then a little bit further on in the video I'll show you how to draw Ed and then decorate him. Have fun! Right, to make homemade paint you will need flour. If you can't get flour, you can use corn flour, but it doesn't work quite as well. The flour is better. You will need some water, that's loads, and you will need some food colourings. I normally use these, which is Wilton gel food colouring. I use it for everything, for the rice, the pasta, the Play-Doh, and it works really well for this. But you can use a liquid food colouring like this. You'll also need a jar, an empty clean jar with a lid, some sort of measuring spoon. You might find a teaspoon useful. You'll need a mixing stick. I'm using this end of the paintbrush. And then you're going to need something to put your paints in. You could use a flower pot tray, or you could use, if you've got one, a flat palette. Basically anything that's flat will hold things in and is sturdy enough for the children's hands, particularly if you're going to go for the finger painting option. It's really simple. First of all, you need to put some flour in. I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of flour. Followed by 2 tablespoons of water. Okay. What I'm going to do is put the lid on the jar and shake. And it soon stops slopping around, and you can hear that there's nothing going on in there, it appears. Give it a really good shake. Stop. And take your top off. Now, you can see it looks pretty gungy. If you want to do finger painting, you don't really want it much thinner than that. And for the sake of using these liquid food colouring, you don't want it much thicker either. So, we're going to go with this now. I'm just going to take my spoon. I'm going to spoon this off because it's really quite gungy. And I'm just going to, that's probably, actually it's probably enough there. So I'm just going to put a drop, just a little tiny bit of this in here. Okay, this was supposed to be green, but it's quite old. It hasn't been used much, so it's more of a, it's got more yellow than lime green, to be honest. But there you go, you can see how quickly that comes up. And immediately we have got some paint that we can use. And that's it. That's all there is to make it the homemade paint. Thoroughly recommend having a spare kitchen paper somewhere just to wipe your spreader with. If you want something a little bit thinner for more detailed work and not going to be using the hands so much, and you're just going to need a tiny bit more water in there. So I'm going to put a little bit into another one. Ooh, quite a lot there. I'm going to put a little bit of this in. Now, if you're using these gel colours, they are very, very strong. You really do need only a tiny bit. So I'm just going to dip that in there. And that should be enough to colour the whole of that to a really bright colour. So here we go. And you can see the transformation. It's still very, very thick. It's still thick enough for finger painting. Obviously, if you're using finger painting, you're going to need a lot more in terms of the amount of flour that you need. If you're doing painting with brushes and so forth, you need it slightly thinner than that. So I'm just going to add a few extra drops of water. Probably enough, just to thin it out to make a little bit more flow with it. Now you'll notice I'm not using the brush end, and that's because I've discovered that the brushes get a bit clogged up, so you really don't want to use brushes if you can help it with this. It's not good for painting with brushes. But there we go. That should be quite nice. And wipe your end. So that's all there is to making these flour based paints. You don't need to worry if your little ones are putting things in their mouths, because it's basically flour and water. That's all it is. Keep it nice and thick if you want to do finger painting. Thin it down a little bit if you want to do painting with implements. Quick add here, just to say, I just add on, if you use the corn flour, you will need to use more corn flour to water, not the 1-to-1 that I used for the flour, but more corn flour, and you will find that it's a much flakier paint and it has a weird effect because it clogs up and dries in a different way. The flour is definitely better. If you can't get flour, then the corn flour does work, just not quite as good. So I'm going to mix up some more colours. and I will come back and show you the chick in just a moment. So there you can see my little palette of homemade paints. Do need to be a little careful in those. They will stain your fingers and so on, but it comes out after a few washes. It should come out of clothes as well because it's water-based, but I would be still covering my children up or tipping them off before they use this. Right, for mark making using these paints, you can use your fingers. You could use sponge painters like these that I've got hold of. You could use cotton wool with a peg attached. You could use basically cotton tips. You can use paints, but you can probably just about see there's some bits in this, and that's from yesterday's painting you were using it. So don't use I'll try that sentence again. Don't use paintbrushes you're bothered about. And surprisingly enough, this was one of the most useful objects. It was just a glue spreader, and that was really, really good. So I shall pop those in there for in a few moments' time. In the meantime, the bird itself, you will need a piece of white paper or coloured paper. I'm using this thicker paper because this is quite watery. It will soak through. Okay, now in addition to that, when you get to the end, you're going to need some feathers like these, or if you haven't got feathers, just some tissue paper which you cut into feathery shapes. Just make a template from an old box, just like that, and then cut out all your feather shapes. You will also need at the end some orange paper for the beak and something for the eyes, and obviously you're going to need glue and a spreader. No reason why you can't use a glue stick. So to draw the bird and the egg, this sounds complicated but is actually really easy. So start with two shapes. You need two round shapes. One is going to be the egg shape, or part of the egg shape, and the other one's going to be the head of the bird. Now you might want to do this in pencil first, but I'm going to do it in pen so that you can see better. So take a plate or something similar, and you're going to go around. Oops, that's the top of my pen falling off. Not quite all the way down, but just over halfway. Take it off, and then you're going to put some jagged bits in. Now obviously, because this is where the egg has broken, doesn't have to be exact. It can be a bit wobbly. And there's the broken egg. Now the head goes somewhere above, nothing in the middle. All around. There you go, your little disembodied head. Now to draw the body. This is easy as it seems. You might want to use pencil first, but I'm just going to go straight for it. Start about there. I'm going to do a curve shape to there, and then here, and a curve shape to there. There we go. There's his body. And your little bird with his head, his body, and he's still sitting inside his egg. So now we go with the fun bit. I'm going to use this one for doing the body and the head. So I'm going to use, I think, I'm going to be interesting this time. I'm going to use the red this time. And I've got some red on like this. And just spill all over the place. There we go. Your child, I'm sure, will not be as careful as this. Now, if you want to change colour, you're going to have to rinse it off in some water. So if you're using a sponge one, don't forget to squeeze it out. And then what shall I use? I'm going to use the orange, I think I'll use. makes me feel like it's birdie. So I'm just going to fairly randomly cover that over. So it doesn't matter if you go outside a little bit, because we're going to cut it out later. There we go. There's my birdie. And then decorate the shell with all the other colours. I'm sure your children will not be as planned as this, so let's just show you how each of these work. Here's the cotton wool held with a feather, with a peg, and I'm going to use green with that one. There we go. It does go a bit sloppy after a moment. That wasn't quite what I intended to do. Oh well. Just a bit messy, but that's life. Cotton tip. What should I do with that? Let's do that with the purple one. Doesn't take up huge amounts, so you have to keep dipping it back in. Easy for spotting things. A bit of yellow perhaps as well, the other end. Boom. There we go. And then the surprise one was this one. I really liked this one when I was playing with this yesterday. So I'm just gonna, there we go. Decorate my egg with all these. You can do lines with this as well, but I just find this seems to work quite nicely. There we go. I'm going to put a bit on there, just try and break up that blob a bit. There we go. One decorated egg and decorated chick. Now at this point you need to leave this to dry. And in a few minutes, because it shouldn't take too long, I will come back again and show you how to finish off your chick in the egg. It's been about 15 minutes and this is almost dry in most places. There's a few bits you can see on the back which are still slightly damp, but it's close enough for me to work with. It will depend how much paint is on there as to how quickly this will dry. So now we're going to turn this into Ed coming out of his egg. First thing is to cut it out. Doesn't have to be exact, just up to that line. Cut round. Obviously, an older child can do this themselves. Oh, missed it there a bit. Hang on, we go. There we go. So all the way round. And this is one reason why you need to have it dry before you do this, is because if it's not dry and you go over some of the homemade paint, if that's what you've used, it will clog up your scissors. And you don't really want to do that, it's just such a pain. So there we go, that's the main bit cut out. Let's rid of the rubbish. Trim that little bit there so we get the egg shape. Put my finger on a wet bit. On that bit, there we go. There's our egg. Now, this one, I used real feathers. So for this one here, I'm going to use the tissue. So I've already cut some leaf shapes, or some leaf stroke feather shapes. All I need to do is a little bit of glue. Don't need very much. I'm going to put some here for the arms. Oh, wings. There we go. Here's Ed's wings coming out of his shoulders, and on the other side you can of course put more feathers on for other parts of the body, if you want to. Okay, that's his wings. Might move that one up a little bit more. So it looks like he's trying to fly. And a few little wing feathers on his head. Just so he looks like he's got a bit of a peak going on there. Yellow one there. And that one in the middle. There we go. There's some feathers on his head. So there's Ed's feathers. And we need some eyes. Eyes. I think we're going to give Ed green eyes today. So one green eye. Two green eyes. And that just leaves a beak. So piece of orange paper, fold a small amount in half like that, and then just going to cut a small triangle on the fold like that. Slightly squiffy, so I'm just going to trim it. There we go. What's it look like when it's on? Yeah, and keeping the fold on works really well, because slightly older children, what you can do is put a bit of glue either end and only stick those bits down, and you end up with a slightly three-dimensional beak that sticks out like that. And there is Ed, ready to explore the world outside of his egg. I hope you had fun making Ed the chick coming out of his egg. Do show me pictures of any Eds that you make, or of your children enjoying the homemade paint. Have a really good week. Keep safe. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all very soon. Bye!